Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I will be sharing the 4 books that I read in August. The first book that I read in August is The Red Pony by John Steinbeck. This was not exactly what I was expecting. This is 4 shorter stories. It's not a collection of short stories, it's more like different times in this one boy's life. There's an overarching theme to the book, but each story or each event in his life don't necessarily build off of each other. These stories were written, I think, kind of years between, and they're presented chronologically in this book in terms of the narrative, so chronologically in this young boy's life, but that's not the order in which they were written. So I don't know if this was ever intended to be a collection, and I think that led me to not love this. I enjoyed it. I always love Steinbeck's writing. It's something that just speaks to me. I love the way he writes. I love the way he builds a character. His characters, as always, are great in this, but I didn't love it like I've loved his other works, although those are books that it's hard to live up to. And I should mention, actually, only 3 of these stories are about this young boy living in on a farm in California, and 3 of the stories are about his life experiences, coming of age, him learning about hard realities of life. One story is about him getting this red pony that's his and he'll get to train it up. One story is about this old man who comes out of the mountains who wants to come back to this farm where he says he was born. The third story is about this boy getting a colt from birth, so his father is bringing in their mare to stud it, is that the term? Bringing their mare to a neighboring farmer's stallion, let's put it that way. And then the resulting colt is going to be this young boy's to raise up. And like I said, they all kind of have this theme of like learning about the harsh realities of life and growing up and the loss of innocence a little bit. The last story is completely separate. I don't even know if it takes place in the same area. I can't remember. No characters are the same. It's completely separate. And so, like, I don't know what it's doing in this collection. Maybe it was written around the same time. It has nothing to do with the other stories. The themes of it aren't really anything connected. So, yeah, I love John Steinbeck's writing. I love the characters. As one whole collection, there's no through narrative, and in a novel, which this isn't, I want like a bit of a stronger plot. So anyway, I really loved the writing and I liked the stories, but it's not top of the list for me in terms of Steinbeck's his other stuff that I've read. The next book that I read, I listened to on audiobook, and that's Girl with a Pearl Earring by Tracy Chevalier, and it was narrated by Ruth Ann Phimister. It's not really heavy on the plot. The book is about this girl who I think is around 16 when the novel starts. It's historical fiction, which has basically imagined who this girl in this famous Vermeer painting is. So the painting's name is Girl with a Pearl Earring, and Vermeer, the artist, is a character in this book, but the main character is Crete, this girl, this teenager who the author has imagined as being a maid. So her father has recently been blinded. Their family needs money. Her older brother goes to become an apprentice to learn how to make and paint tiles, which is what their father had done. And Crete goes to live at the Vermeer's residence as their maid in order to earn money to support her family. So that's the basic premise. There's a lot of tension in the household between Crete and the other servant, especially between Crete and the mistress of the house, Vermeer's wife, between her and one of the children. And I think the novel is really talking about women's position, especially women in poverty, but women in general. Even the women in this story who have power and are able to wield power in some circumstances, it's pretty clear that in other circumstances they are nearly as powerless as the maid. Crete is trying to do the right thing. She's trying to keep her head down and just get the work done to earn some money, but she finds herself increasingly put in these positions, increasingly precarious positions within the household. I think the main character was really interesting. There's a naiveness to Crete. She's a little bit odd, and it offers this very interesting kind of lens through which she understands her situation. One thing that I didn't really love about this book is, even though it's historical fiction, I didn't really get a good sense of the time and place, which is surprising because the author's writing is very descriptive and lush, but it still didn't put me in that time. And it is light on plot, and I usually like a little bit more plot. It's basically her trying to survive in this household and what is going to become of her life. The next book I also listened to on audio, and that was The Secret Diaries of Charles Ignatius Sancho by Paterson Joseph, read by the author. Another historical fiction based on another real life historical figure, which is Charles Ignatius Sancho. So he was the first Black Briton to vote. He had been born on a slave ship, ended up in Britain. It's about his life from boyhood up until he's a young man, and then a little bit into his later life when he does run a store and get to vote. So I don't consider that a spoiler since this is a real person's life. Now, the author does make it clear in his introduction that this is highly fictionalized. A lot of the things that happen to Sancho are things that happened to the real life person, but the author takes a lot of leeway, and it's not really about the specifics. It's about one man coming from these horrific beginnings and really struggling, and what history erases. And this is telling a fictionalized history, but a history in some form of this man who had struggles, but also held a lot of privilege for a Black British person, especially in this times. This is set in the mid 1700s. The way it's written really reads like literature of the time / kind of reminded me of Victorian. I know it's not set in the Victorian era, but it had that kind of feel. It felt very Victorian to me. I don't know how else to put it. It felt somewhat episodic, almost as if it could have been a serialized novel. It also kind of had a little bit of those elements of slave narratives at the time. I, again, would have preferred a stronger plot through the novel, as it did feel very episodic of the things happening in his life. It had some interesting moments and dynamics between characters, and it felt very theatrical. And I have since learned that actually the author had previously written a play about Charles Ignatius Sancho's life. I don't know how closely this resembles that, but it felt very theatric. Part of that might have also been that I listened to it on audio. And if you were going to read this book, I would definitely recommend it on audio because the author's performance, I think, lended a lot to it. Very bold and theatrical, and I just really enjoyed how he read it. But like I said, not a very strong through plot, more so the things that are happening in his life. But I did enjoy the book. This has just happened to be a month of very minimal plotting, I guess. And that's going to continue with the last book that I read this month, which was Sing, Unburied, Sing by Jesmyn Ward. This is another book that didn't really have a firm plot. I would have liked it better if it had more plot. I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed everything I read this month. I didn't have any duds. Nothing got to the 5-star level. Lots of 3.5 and 4-star kind of general area. This is beautifully written. I had read Jesmyn Ward's memoir, Men We Reaped, and that was a 5-star. I loved that book. I loved her writing. I loved her writing in this book just as much. I love how she pulls sentences together. It is very poetic and rich. Again, it doesn't really have a firm plot. We are more so following a couple of characters in this family. It shifts perspective between Jojo, who is, I believe, 13 years old, and his mother, Leonie, and they both live with Jojo's grandparents. His father is in prison, and he sees his grandparents more as parents than he does his mother, Leonie. In fact, he calls her Leonie. He doesn't call her mom. There's this unfortunate kind of relationship where Leonie and Jojo's father, whose name is Michael, Leonie and Michael seem to be more into each other and into their relationship than they are their kids or building a family unit together. The loose plot of this is that Michael is being released from prison and Leonie's going to go pick him up, and she decides to take her 2 children, Jojo, who's 13, and his younger sister, who is, I think, probably around 2.5 or 3, maybe around that age. There's a kind of ghostly element to this where certain members of this family, it seems, can either sense spirits, see them outright, how they can kind of hear the world communicating to them. It's about those literal ghosts, but also the ghosts of your past. It's about family history. It goes back a little bit to talk about the grandmother and grandfather, and you get to know a little bit about their backstory. Not a lot. We learn more about the grandfather, and I think that was the stronger part of the book. The grandfather's stories that he shares with Jojo, those to me are more of the backbone of this book, and I think it would have been a stronger book if it was focused, if that was the focus, and we kind of dropped maybe some of the other part of the story. There was an attempt made to kind of merge those 2 histories and the ghosts of the past from the grandfather and the grandmother together at the end, but I thought it was a little bit messy and it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So yeah, because of the loose plot and the fact that I found the ending kind of messy, I didn't end up loving this book either, but I did really enjoy it. I think the writing is amazing. I just love the way she writes things, and I'll definitely pick something else up from her. But if you're more into characters and you don't care about plot, then I definitely would recommend this still. So those are the books that I read in August. If you've read any of them, I would love to hear what you thought about them. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.